Alrighty. Fey Tactics has been conquered. Alright. This was a fun game. My overall thoughts, this is one of the best tactics games I have ever played. Ever. It is a really fascinating take on the whole tactics genre because there's so many creative tweaks that they do to it. And I think a lot of them work extremely well. Extremely happy with them kind of taking a lot of risks with the game. It's super nice. The balance changes were a little rough to deal with, mostly because it's a single player game. And so this one kind of, I don't want to say like it hurt my experience. I mean, it definitely did hurt my experience, but I don't really want to say that in a way that takes away from the game because, getting changes to the game is ultimately a good thing. Getting bug fixes and things like that. Mostly where my issues came around is normally you don't really see those types of changes in a single player game. Usually they leave the balance, air quotes, sections alone and they just do bug fixes. So it was kind of weird to encounter things like cloak being changed to 2 turns instead of being indefinite, or leaders getting more execute HP. Stuff like that was an interesting thing to encounter, especially when a lot of my strategies early on were kind of utilizing the things that they were nerfing, so it was an interesting dynamic. For the story, was it satisfying? I will say yes. I admit, when I first started playing this game, this story was just kind of not interesting in the slightest, a girl's going out to search for her mother, and nothing was really going on about that. Granted, I spent like the first 25 hours doing mostly side quests, and I was having a ton of fun with that. But it turns out the side quests aren't kind of not really side quests. They're actually kind of related to everything that's going on, which is really cool. I guess the crazy thing about the story is it really did kind of move into my type of story, my genre of story, where it starts off being kind of inconspicuous. And it grew into something super crazy of, these beings trying to destroy the world, and they're crazy looking, they're crazy powerful, and they're doing these crazy schemes that are actually kind of believable and can actually work. And so that was really cool. And then the scheme at the end by each usage was, like the cherry on top. Like, I manipulated you to this end still was amazing in of itself. So I applaud the game for that. Did it feel complete? It was complete. It did feel complete. I don't think there's any lingering plot threads that I need to know or that I'm waiting for. So good job on that. How was the pacing? I think tactics games generally have a kind of weird pacing, but this one was actually pretty good. You can basically just, as far as I can tell, just kind of do what's important to you, and I think the game doesn't really slow you down with anything that doesn't really matter. So I applaud the game for that. Let me see. For the writing, I think the writing was pretty solid. I don't think I have very much more to say about that. There were some nice moments. There were some very revealing moments, like I was saying with like the plots upon plots So that stuff was really nice. For gameplay mechanics and design, what gameplay elements stand out? Summons are cool and an interesting way to approach a tactics game's party system. I think this is a really neat tweak because normally in a tactics game, you know, you can recruit party members and whatnot, but like that's kind of static in that you're gonna usually use the same characters in a battle, and they might change classes, they might change equipment, yada yada, but you're usually always going to use the same people. And so this game kind of flipped that a little bit. You have your core 3 slots, your leaders basically, and then you have a set amount of points that you can spend on summons, which have all kinds of varying uses for varying situations. I switched up my summons a great deal throughout this playthrough, swapping from one thing that was working for me to one thing that was crazy strong. It wasn't consistent for a large period of time other than me having the rock. Once I got the rock and I mimicked it, that kind of carried me through a lot of the mid-game there, which was really great. Cooking prior to a mission is cool, a nice mini-game that is totally optional and costs nothing to do, but gives benefits for the next battle. I totally appreciate this, and on top of that, the cooking is not, it's not just the cooking. You can actually get a secret character from the cooking, as long as you're doing it in the right place. So I think that's really cool as well. Collecting parts to gain various upgrades is cool. I definitely like this as well. They didn't have to have any of this in the game, but because they did, there was just another aspect to engage in, and it allowed you to grind to become a little bit overpowered, and it allowed you to kind of take whatever direction you wanted to go. I think only one upgrade path was required, and that's the bike, the mana bike. But other than that, you technically don't really need anything else. So I was very happy about that. Expanding the summoning slot pool with parts is questionable for me. This one I wasn't sure if I liked it, because I think having all the summon slots would be a better implementation. And so, like, none of the little, we're going to call them little bubbles, they're not gained by progressing the story, other than gaining access to the extra 2 slots in the upgrade spot. The preferred method for me is that either all of them are gained, or maybe like the upgrade path gains via story. It happening by collecting parts, it's not as bad as it sounds. It's just probably the least preferable method for me. Let's see, likely the most valuable upgrade of them all. I don't know if I would still agree with this. I think having the extra execute HP on leaders is extremely good, and that carries over to your summons, which gives them the guts, and the guts is extremely important for a lot of strategies. You can actually just even abuse the guts by throwing them into the grinder and relying on the guts to kind of save the strategy a little bit. Let's see. I would have liked all slots to be unlocked and instead offer more interesting methods to get additional summons. I also think that the summons could have been tweaked with their costs. I don't think a lot of them are worth what they cost, and some of them might not cost enough. I think the rock should probably be more than 3. And then arguably, I might even say that the whole like subspecies thing, I think that's an interesting idea. And I actually do like the implementation. But now that I'm thinking about increasing costs, some subspecies are way better than other subspecies. So like, for example, the phoenix is just okay. But the rock is godlike. And so like the rock should at least be 4, probably 5. And the phoenix could be 2, maybe 3, but probably 2. So I think they could have done more interesting things with the acquisitions of the summons, kind of like with the mana bike there, where if you get the last upgrade, you can start collecting the 6 bubble ones, and more things like that would be kind of cool. Maybe some side quests to have some summons join you would have been a little more interesting for me. Let's see. The game markets itself as a menuless tactics game, and I don't actually know how important or influential that is to me. This one was a little interesting for me for sure, because I don't think the menuless tactics really improved my experience. There were some situations where I think it kind of detracted from my experience, and I think it would have been cool to maybe have some options available. But then again, there are just some things in this game where if stuff was expanded on more, then the menuless options would work better. And I'll kind of get to that stuff. And then, would this work for consoles? Can you do this menuless tactic on consoles and have it work? I was thinking about this, and I'm kind of on the fence on if it would work or not, but it's kind of an interesting conundrum to think about. Let's see. I wish there was an option to see the mouse cursor on the screen at all times. The game hides the mouse cursor quite a few times, and I'm not a big fan of that. I'm also going to tack onto this, even though it's not necessarily related to it. The camera kind of locks itself in a lot of situations, and it always works against me, especially for like the big AoE moves. So like the spells, or like in that final fight, for example, with Matilda, I was trying to use her ult, but I needed to see everything that was being hit by it, and I could not see that based off of where the camera was zoomed. You cannot move around once you made your selection. A tweak to that could be let you move the camera, or in the this could have been a thing and I just not noticed it, but I don't think it was a thing. If you target somebody in the turn order, it would be cool if like the sword appeared over them, or you know, like their portrait appeared or something like that, saying like, hey, these are all the targets that you're hitting. I would like that. Let's see. Maxing a stat gives benefits. This was really cool. This caught me way by surprise. I wasn't expecting this at all, and I'm quite happy that was just like an extra added benefit that you could get. And I would say the majority of them were actually pretty cool. Some of them, you know, weren't that great, but the majority of them were pretty cool. So I'm very happy that they just kind of they added a nice system on top of a system that didn't need it, but it worked to its benefit greatly. Let's see. Characters get different accessories from side quests, which change how they play. This was also super cool. This game doesn't really have equipment per se, and so this particular aspect, along with scrolls, kind of act as equipment in this game. And it's really cool that a piece of, like an accessory, some of them are equipments, but I'm just gonna call them accessories, they basically change how that character plays. I do wish some of them were a little more diverse. I think Peony has a really nice range with them, in the sense of she has her ranged attack one, Arcane. Then in Ice, she's a melee attacker. And then in Earth, she's a melee attacking defender. I think those are pretty nice. I would have liked maybe Ice to be slightly more diverse. It would be kind of cool if maybe the piercing actually was range 2, like Final Fantasy Tactics Dragoons, you know, where they can attack 2 squares away. They don't have to attack adjacent to hit the square, the second square, basically. But the accessories were a really cool addition. They didn't have to do this, and it was really cool to get them from side quests. Character scrolls are cool. Really, really cool. I wish the method to cycle through them was less tedious, though. This is an example of a menu making things faster. It would be better if the layout was maybe changed, maybe like a scroll down way, but having to cycle through 42 scrolls to find the scroll that you want, that is a huge detraction from fun. There was a lot of times where I'm just looking for the mana burn scroll. Where is it at? If instead it had maybe like a drop down menu, or maybe on like the right side it had like a scroll down menu, and it would tell you what the scroll did, who it was equipped on, if any, and how many of those particular scrolls you had, and all the other relevant information. So that is something that I would have liked a lot more. And I wish you could equip 2 of the same scrolls on different characters. This was something that I was kind of disappointed in initially, but I don't necessarily dislike the implementation. I just wish that there was a little bit more optimization for that. I don't think a lot of the scrolls are useful, especially the ones that rely on certain elements. I think those were among the worst scrolls out there. I think the only use for them is to change Peony's element, and that's a very niche use for them. They're not very good. I will say, what can make scrolls better is if you can equip them on summons. That would make those scrolls in particular a little bit more useful. Not much, though. I think all of those need to be tweaked, buffed. They need some changes to make them useful. What's up, Sinuses? Yes, I did it. In fact, yes. Words. And then character weapons are cool. I don't know where I was going with this that's different from accessories. I think that's just a duplicate. Sometimes I write things down, and whatchamacallit. You feel like games, you like these thanks for playing screens? You feel like games don't do that often anymore? I agree. I really like it when the game thanks me for playing it, because I thank you, developers and game, for letting me play. Here we go into combat. Combo attacks from melee units are really cool. This was one of my favorite elements of this game, because a lot of strategy games have various, we'll say tactical elements to it, but a lot of the strategies are mostly, how am I going to arrange this character so that they don't get hit by this AoE? But in this game, it's how do I leverage my melee units to do as much damage as possible? And this was like a really core mechanic in this game that is so important to do as much damage as possible. And I think this game does a really good job of not only making it so that melee units aren't incredibly punished for being close, but also being very useful for being that close to enemies. We've seen tons and tons of enemies in here where melee units would just not work. And in most circumstances, I did get punished. There were some circumstances where I actually didn't use any melee units, but I abused Claudia to her full extent, basically. But I really like the combo aspect of the melee units in this game. I think it's an incredibly unique idea, and it works, and I would love to see more games do something similar. Ultra attacks are cool, though I wish you could choose if you wanted to use it. And I also have, this is slightly a thing with EX attacks, but not really. I think ultra attacks are definitely cool. It's, again, another small mechanic that allows you to kind of switch up your strategy and change things. The fact that you get an attack one and a defense one is also really amazing. I relied on Claudia's a lot for most of the difficult fights because getting max HP is really strong. Who would have thought? Especially in a game where most of your characters have less than 100 HP. And I also have, you should be able to see what enemy ultra attacks do prior to them doing it. And even then, like sometimes an enemy will use their ultra and you still don't really know what it does. That's just another thing where if the game had more of that information available right off the bat, then it would make the menuless system work better. If I could mouse over their ultra bar and it says what their ultra does and what its range is, you know, all the information that I need, then I can make informed decisions about the fight and how to approach it. Getting benefits for using the wait command is cool. It's super cool to kind of not, I don't want to say get punished, but like in other tactics games, there's kind of a lot of dead movement where, you know, you gotta move them forward and it's not really getting you anywhere other than distance, basically. So it's kind of really cool that this game decides to give you a benefit for it. Not every character can get said benefit right away. Sometimes certain criteria needs to be met, but I think it just adds a little bit more depth to the tactic genre that's never been explored before from me. So I like it a lot. You can buff adjacent allies instead of waiting with benefits that depend on your element, which is cool. Just another thing to tack on to adding a little bit more depth. You can buff your allies with various things. You can heal them. You can just do really cool things by interacting with other characters. And this expands into the summon pool, and it's really, really cool how they approached kind of the turn-taking aspect of a tactics game and how much different it is from other tactics games out there. And it works, is what the best part is. Drop those frames. Let's see. I'm not sure I like the implementation of Mana Barrier. It's effectively more health, but it's a lot more health. Mana Barrier, I think Mana Barrier is probably my least favorite thing. It's basically just it's double the health basically. But the problem is it just gets abused too much. Uh, some enemies just have way too much mana barrier, and mana barrier units take 50% less damage unless you're critting them. I would have liked to see different implementations used with mana barrier. Maybe an enemy has 1 HP and they have 1,000 mana barrier. So it's like, oh man, if I can figure out a way to cut through that mana barrier, I can one-shot this enemy. Just add a little bit more diversity to it. For the most part, I would be okay with mana barrier being taken away, or there being more reliable methods of getting mana barrier taken down, I guess. I feel like most bosses can't have status ailments applied to them, so any instance where you want to silence them is not really going to work reliably. Mana barrier definitely slows down the combat just too much, especially because on the player side, you don't get to have a lot of mana barrier. You see these enemies with 5,000 HP and 5,000 mana barrier. You can't get 5,000 mana barrier. I could be in a fight for probably 3 hours and probably not get 5,000 mana barrier on one character. It's just crazy that you kind of have to put up with that. I'm fine with the enemies are a little bit more overpowered than the players, like that's fine. But when the enemies have that amount of resilience and defense, and they do crazy things, and they do crazy damage, it's just kind of taking it over the top. I think I personally would like to see mana barrier removed, just give them more HP. I think they did interesting things with like that super armor, where they don't get crit unless you take down the durability of the super armor. I would like to see more implementations of ideas similar to that. But if mana barrier was going to stick around, I would just like to see a lot less mana barrier on leader units, bosses, and kind of utilize more techniques to kind of buff the mana barrier a little bit. Maybe they get tranquil after every attack, but they only have 50 mana barrier. So it's like, okay, I need to make sure I'm doing more than 50 damage, or maybe even 50. Well, maybe the tranquil only give them like 25 or something like that. Like you just need a tweak on it so that the mana barrier isn't overbearing. That final boss fight was insane with the mana barrier. It'd be nice if it soaked more magic as opposed to physical. That would be cool too. That would be really cool if maybe melee attacks, especially like untyped damage, did significantly more damage to mana barrier than magic. Maybe mana barrier is only useful against magic, and that would make the untyped characters even better, like Chico and Aerosold. So I like that suggestion as well. I have something else here for mana barrier. It wouldn't be as bad if the barrier drain scroll could be distributed to all units, but that also presents the issues that the scroll is the strongest, in my opinion. I do think that scroll is probably the strongest scroll in terms of dealing with mana barrier, because it's designed to deal with mana barrier, but I would like to see just some different things, I guess, is where I would want to go with that. If mana barrier was used to deter you from using magic and more physical damage, that'd be different too. I agree, especially because in a lot of fights, you want to leverage those melee units as much as possible. So where you're doing reduced magical damage, you're kind of making up for it with the melee units in range. So that would be cool. I don't like totems at all. Yeah. Totems? Next to Mana Barrier. I think Mana Barrier is my least favorite thing, and then totems is right under it. Totems are frustrating, especially in the early game. They patched this out. In the early game, against I want to say like one of the first bosses, if not the first boss you go up against, with Orowantis, she summons a totem, but before they patched this out, she could summon a totem wherever she wants. And what would happen is we would be fighting at the very beginning of the stage, or the middle of the stage, or the level, and she would summon a totem all the way in the back on top of a cliff, and there's no way I can deal with that totem. So I have to waste, 4 or 5 turns to attack all these people, and I'm not doing damage to them. I'm doing damage to a totem all the way back there. It's insane how crazy totems are. If they summon totems adjacent to them, it would be a little bit better. The fights, that fight with Ripheus or whatever his name was, like that fight is an example of there being way too many totems. Thankfully, there was only him and two units, but we also had a Solaris cannon to worry about too. So totems is another thing where I personally think there needs to be some heavy-handed changes to it for it to not feel ridiculously absurd. And that's me actually ignoring some of the other mechanics of totems too. Like, I am strictly talking about the damage absorption mechanic of it. Let's not forget that some totems actually give benefits to people on the field, like mana barrier every turn, or attack every turn, or a constant movement speed buff. And on top of that, totems can attack. So if you get too close to a totem and you can't kill it, they're gonna attack you. And then on top of that, some totems are called phylacteries, and they don't absorb damage. They just constantly buff the boss that they're attached to, and they just teleport all over the Suckafu place. I don't like totems. As a matter of fact, maybe totems and mana barrier are just tied. I might be okay with dealing with mana barrier than totems. But the thing is you don't encounter a crazy amount of totems, but you encounter a crazy amount of mana barrier all the time. So now mana barrier's got to stay on top is my least favorite. Let's see. Going down my list of things about totems, they are incredibly disruptive to the flow of battle. They really are. A lot of totems you can one-shot, but the problem is they're always in the most difficult places of the level. And so you kind of have to rely on the damage absorption aspect of them to actually kill them. And so it's not a thing where it changes the strategy. It's a thing where you kind of have to throw out the rule book, or you have to change things up on your end so much to account for the totems. And it's not like they absorb 1 attack or 2 attacks. Some totems absorb like 5 attacks. So you're spending so much time killing them. And just ugh. Depending on the spawn location, they can be extremely difficult to deal with. This is especially true when they have mana barrier. Yep, absolutely. If they didn't explode and they didn't offer any additional benefits other than absorbing damage, it would be in the right direction. I think it's in the right direction, but I still think more significant changes need to be made to them. Maybe if they only absorbed one attack, maybe that would be nice. Maybe if they couldn't have mana barrier, maybe that would be nice. Maybe they only had 1 HP. These are steps in the right direction to make totems better for me. And then on top of that, like, we as players can't utilize totems. There's one character that you can get totems with, and it's not a summon, it's not a spell card or anything like that. So maybe if the player could utilize totems, maybe that would change things a little bit, but so far, no. Spell cards are cool. Spell cards are really cool. Another thing that just adds a little bit more depth to the tactics genre that gives you a more strategic viability. It's really cool when I go into a fight and I'm like, okay, these are my enemies that I have to deal with. Got it. Let me choose these particular leaders to best complement the destruction of said enemies. Let me choose these 3 summons to assist my leaders and also counter the enemy units. And then let me choose these 3 spells to support the strategy that I previously constructed there with my leader units and summons. It's incredibly cool, and a lot of depth and complexity was added to it. And there's tons of different kinds of spells to utilize. So your strategies can change drastically just by changing up your spells, and just not just your spell cards, but your summons and your leaders or your leaders' accessories. Like, it's just really, really cool. I like it a lot. You should be able to mouse over enemy cards to see what they do. This is something that's been kind of frustrating me. There's some of them that I still don't even know what they do, and it would be nice to see what kind of totems are going to be spawned, yada yada, this and that. I've complained about it a lot, but there's just a lot of information that you cannot learn by mousing over it, and I do feel like in a system that accommodated a menu, that information would be easily accessible, I suppose. So, if it was added, but I feel like in a menu, it would most likely be added. Anyways, I feel the fight overview screen needs classical tweaks. So where this game does a lot of innovation from the classical tactics games like Final Fantasy Tactics or Tactics Ogre or Fire Emblem, I do think that it needs to take some of those elements and bring them into this game, because there's really not much reason why you wouldn't have them in here. For example, you should be able to inspect every unit for stats, ability, and movement. So in the overview screen, the only things you have access to are where the units are positioned. You can see any hazards. You can see the map, and you can see where the units are positioned, and you can see what the units are, and you can see what the element of those units are. But you cannot see how much mana barrier they have, how much health they have, what their attack stats are, how many ultimate or ultra charges do they need to actually use their ultra, what their movement is, what their weight commands are, what their special abilities are. Do they have chain? Do they have splash? Do they have arc? All of these things are crucial to choosing your summons, your characters, and your spells. These are all very important things that affect your choices, and it's really frustrating to basically just say, okay, I guess I'm going to choose this, and once I get into the battle and actually get to see the information I need to see, I'll restart so that I can use that information that should have been available to me to start with. Yeah. You should be able to rearrange your unit placement and summon placement. There's a lot of situations where I don't actually get the optimal placement for my units, especially when it comes to me using the Mimic. The Mimic doesn't have the greatest movement in the world, and I would position those in a better spot so that I can actually utilize the rock that I normally copied, use its attack, and then mimic it so that I don't have to waste a turn. And let's see, swapping out main party members should not have to go through the traits menu. I actually think, so if you remember up there, it's the summons first, traits, and then spell cards. There should just be another little selection thing up there that says party members. I think for quite some time, I didn't actually know you could swap out party members because you have to go through the traits menu. You go through the traits menu, and then you click on party to then go into the party, you know? Come on. Let's see. The objectives of the fight can't be seen after you initially click away from it. I didn't like this as well. Most fights only involve killing all enemies or killing the leaders. So there's not a ton of variety there to worry about, but it just would be really nice if I could press tab, or if there was a little bubble at the top left-hand corner where I can mouse over and it says objectives, kill all enemy leaders. That kind of stuff should always be visible. And on top of that, certain bonus objectives, such as not killing any of the Gorgon sisters, should be visible as well. This game doesn't let you go back and redo a mission after you've already completed it, because this game auto-saves after basically after everything you do. Whether you cook, whether you craft something like an upgrade, it auto saves a lot. So there's a little bit of rough times there. You can utilize multiple save slots, sure, but I mean that's a band-aid and not really a fix to the problem. The problem is if the actual goal is to not kill any of the Gorgon sisters, the game should say, hey, your goal is to kill all enemy leaders. Bonus objective, don't execute any of the Gorgon sisters. There's a lot of little side objectives. For example, recruiting red. That one is another one where, you know, like 2.5% or something like that on Steam right now. Have that. I had someone in chat tell me how to do that, and I'm eternally grateful for that, because I would have never done that on my own. So yeah. Nothing about dungeons. Cardinal sins. I would say they removed a key party member without sufficient replacement. That was Pyachin. We did get Pyachin back, better than ever, but I wish. It's a cardinal sin. Backup party members do not get full experience. This one is a very different thing, because most, if not all, other tactics games I've ever played, they don't give backup party members any experience. So I do appreciate that this game actually does give them experience, but just give them full experience. You know, there's no reason to not do that. And then there was one more that I can't see. The text is super. Forcing the player to use certain party members. This was usually only on side quests, so I think ultimately it's not as bad. I would have loved for them to take the final battle approach. In the final battle, you get to use Claudia, and then you get to use 3 other party members. So what they should have done for those scenarios is do the exact same thing. You use the required party member as their like a side requirement that, you know, like that character's automatically in the battle. And then you get to choose your 3 characters, and, you know, you can do a lot of really nice things with that. So, wish that was a thing. For miscellaneous, for sound and music, great music and plenty of variety. I really like basically every single track in this game. The soundtrack is pretty wonderful. None of the battle tracks ever got stale for me. They were switching it up plenty of times, and I appreciate it and I like it. There's no voice acting. For graphics, great pixel art. I really do like the graphics of this game. I think they work really well, and I think there's a lot of nice variety as well. There's tons of enemies in this game, which is quite cool as well. For replay value, so does this game offer additional story content and a second playthrough to warrant playing the game again, such as Fire Emblem Three Houses? I would imagine that it doesn't. Mostly because, you know, what would there be to actually do? But I would probably say no. There isn't any additional content. I'm guessing this is just going to be, New Game Plus. We don't keep our main characters. I don't know what this bubble is. This is now a second bubble. I mean, I just want to see if this is going to start at the very beginning. I'm guessing it is, because when I first started playing this game, it started me at the very beginning, because it was assuming that I was on New Game Plus, so I had to restart after they fixed that. So I would say that this game does not have any replay value. There was one particular thing that I missed out on, which, because I killed the Gorgon sisters, I didn't get to fight Azuna, which means that I didn't get Orowantis' third weapon, and I would have liked to do that Azuna fight, but I don't see any replay value according to the criteria that I have. I think there's some incentive to do another playthrough to see things that you didn't experience, though. And so, if the developer is watching, I just got to reiterate, this is definitely one of the best tactics games I have ever played. I kind of just want to say it is the best tactics game I've ever played. When I think back to other tactics games, like, none of them do enough interesting things to be on the level of Fey Tactics. Fey Tactics has a separate type of complexity to it that's different from other tactics games. And I could even argue that while the available options that are traditional with other tactics games being compared to Fey Tactics may not be expansive, the other elements add more strategic value to the genre than anything else. Like, for example, you could have 25 classes in the game, but this game, almost every character, maybe I don't know if Red or Tom have other weapons, but maybe if I recruit them sooner or something like that. But, like, we'll just say almost every character has 3 different weapons, which gives them 3 play styles. So you can say that those characters are kind of like 3 classes per character. Each one of those characters plays differently. And then you have summons. How many summons are there? 25, 30? And then you have to take into account their subspecies. A great deal of summons have subspecies, so all of those can be considered classes if you want to. And then there's scrolls, which kind of act as like special equipment. So like the complexities are very equivalent in a lot of respects. And so I really think this is a top tier, like an amazingly top tier tactics game. If you were on the fence about making another one, I hope you're not. I hope this game does great, because I want a Fate Tactics 2. I'll take an expansion. I'll take some DLC. This game is amazing. Absolutely amazing. I don't know how much more praise I can give it at this point. So I just gotta say, well done, and I love it. So to reiterate my overall thoughts, this game is amazing. I love it, and everybody should play it if you like tactics game. You know, I can understand if you don't like tactics game. You know, it's not your thing or whatever. But yeah, that's all I got to say about Fate Tactics. So I'm gonna wrap up this thoughts video with that. Yeah.